Welcome to another episode, everyone. The only U.S. city that Crips and Bloods dare to enter. Now, there's a lot of debate about this. Individuals are saying there's no Crips and Bloods in my city either. No Crips and Bloods over here. Yeah, perhaps, but they're not afraid to go over there. This city, Crips and Bloods refuse to enter. They refuse to go into this city. These are some tough individuals, these thugs / Crips and Bloods. Nevertheless, when it comes time to going over here, they say, no, we'll take a hard pass because over here it is very dangerous and very vicious, and many individuals come up missing in action. Check this out.
We all know how the Crips and Bloods made their name across the US, claiming blocks, repping hard, and leaving their mark in damn near every city they touched. But there's one place that checked their ego real quick: Puerto Rico. Now, when folks talk about the murder capitals of the US, names like Chicago or LA usually come up. But the truth? Puerto Rico outpaces them all when it comes to raw violence and street life.
At least 5 people are dead after a shooting massacre in Puerto Rico.
Even the toughest sets tread lightly out there. Let's get into it. When you watch the news in Puerto Rico, it hits different. Even though it's a US territory, the news out there doesn't come with the same filters or censorship you'd see on the mainland. Turn on the TV during a crime report and don't be surprised if you catch raw footage, like actual unblurred bodies in the background. It's graphic, it's real, and it tells you right away. Things here aren't sugar-coated.
Violent deaths on the island, the highest figure in a generation. It's thought many are linked to a big increase in drug.
But before we get into the thick of it, let's rewind and set the stage. Puerto Rico, once called Borinquen by the Taíno, meaning land of the valiant lord, still carries that pride today, with locals calling themselves Borichua. It's also known as La Isla del Encanto, and yeah, it's beautiful. But beneath all that charm, the island lives in a strange kind of limbo. See, the US won't make Puerto Rico a state, even though most folks on the island want it. And because of that, they get shorted in a bunch of ways. Retirees pull in less from Social Security, Medicare doesn't go as far, and even though Puerto Rico's population is bigger than several US states, it can't file for bankruptcy or get a proper bailout when things go south. On top of that, people there can't vote for US representatives. And it's in this kind of setup, this raw overlooked system, that guys like El Burro rise up.
Nelson Torres Delgado está acusado por un gran jurado federal por cargos de narcotráfico, asesinato y violación a la ley de armas.
Nelson Torres Delgado. The name might not ring a bell right away, but on the island, he became a ghost in the headlines, a myth in the alleys, the most wanted man in Puerto Rico. From rundown housing projects to deep green mountain valleys where secrets stay buried for decades, his influence stretched like a storm cloud. Nelson's childhood didn't stand out much. Born into poverty like so many others, life was just survival. But even early on, people noticed something in him. Quiet, sharp, always watching. While other kids were playing ball or riding bikes, Nelson was learning how the street worked. He'd watch older boys run dope for local dealers, taking mental notes before he even hit his teens. By the time he was in his late teens, folks started calling him El Burro, the donkey, not because he was slow, but because he was stubborn as hell and carried more weight than most grown men could handle. The 2010s were rough for Puerto Rico. Economic collapse, political mess, hurricanes, everything hit at once. And where most saw wreckage, Nelson saw openings. He started out small, just another runner moving packs, earning stripes, and building trust. But he never planned to stay small. By his early 20s, he had a loyal crew, riders who'd go to war for him without hesitation. He wasn't loud or flashy, but he was calculated, reward loyalty, punish betrayal, that was his code. And with that mindset, he built an empire. El Burro ended up controlling the flow in places like Caguas, Cayey, and other key points on the island. His operation wasn't some ragtag setup. It was clean, precise, and run like a damn corporation. Heroin, coke, weed, fentanyl. It all passed through his hands and it moved like clockwork. And he wasn't just pushing drugs. He got smart with the money too, cleaning it through car washes, nightclubs, even churches.
They do this everywhere. They do this in Los Angeles, California. You have high-ranking individuals in the game, in the drug game, who have parlayed their illicit money into legal businesses. But the individuals are saying that no, in Philadelphia, there are no Crips and Bloods in Philadelphia either. You all let me know about this in the comments. They say in Philadelphia and in Chicago, people were saying, no, man, there are no Crips and Bloods in Philly at all, and there are no Crips and Bloods in Chicago. They said that there are some individuals who live out there that are Crips and Bloods, but there are no gangs, no Crip and Blood gangs out there in Chicago or Philadelphia. But again, that's still different than, I believe what he's saying here is that these individuals will not even enter Puerto Rico, at least certain parts of it. They will not even enter Crips and Bloods. Well, Crips and Bloods will not even enter. So if you're saying that there are some in Chicago, there are some in Philly, but there's just that there are no Crip and Blood sets, but there are individuals out there, and you know about them, which means even though they don't have a set out there, they are still making their affiliation known. But I also still get it that if there are no Crip and Blood sets out there, then they're saying in Philly and Chicago, we have our own thing out here. It has nothing to do with Crip and Blood, because Crip and Bloods, of course, have went everywhere. They're everywhere now. They have Crips and Bloods in Canada. I'm dead serious. They're everywhere. So, I mean, if they don't have any in Chicago and Philly, there is something to be said about that. If that is the case, you let me know if that's the case, because I really don't know, because they're everywhere now. So I'm thinking they didn't infiltrate every city, but they said there are none in Philly, none in Chicago.
But no matter how many suits or businesses he touched, the streets were always home. Drugs were his currency, violence was his language. El Burro ran the streets like a ghost with a crown. His power, untouchable. His lieutenants didn't ask questions. They handled business, collecting debts, silencing enemies, and making sure anyone who paid up got to live in relative peace. But that peace, it was paper thin. Every now and then, turf wars would break out, and when they did, the streets bled. In Caguas, fear hung in the air. Gunshots became part of the nightly soundtrack right there with the Coqui Frogs. Sirens didn't startle anyone anymore. They were just part of life. El Burro's crew moved like shadows, masked up and strapped, always making sure their presence was felt. They'd hand out food and cash in the poorest corners, keeping folks quiet and loyal. Some people even called him a Robin Hood, but let's be real, most knew better. That generosity wasn't kindness, it was a deal. Take the help, stay silent, play your role. And when things got violent, they didn't do it halfway. In 2021, the Sidra massacre sent shockwaves across the island. 5 bodies in one night, left out in the open like trophies. The message was loud and clear. This was his turf, and stepping out of line came with a death sentence. But it wasn't just rivals catching bullets. Innocents got swept up too. In 2022, during a shootout between crews, a retired school teacher named Margarita Rodriguez Morales got hit. She died right there in the chaos. People were outraged, but fear kept their mouths shut. The cops, they were always 2 steps behind, outgunned, outsmarted, and outmanned. In 2017,
I mean, this happens everywhere. You know, innocent people are killed during these gang attacks, gang wars, gang violence, where individuals are going back and forth shooting one another. Innocent civilians who do not gangbang are often affected. Children are often killed by stray bullets and all of that. So this happens everywhere. Nevertheless, this is not to minimize Puerto Rico's violence or Mexico, because we do know that individuals are deathly afraid to go to Mexico and Puerto Rico in certain parts of it, because you can come up missing. They're out there kidnapping you, whatever, holding people for ransom. This is well known. Killing police officers, judges, politicians. It gets crazy out there, for real, because it is so lawless. They came one time a few years ago to get one of the head honchos, one of the ringleaders. The police had him in custody. In their custody, had him in the car. They had cuffed him up, arrested him, and his crew came out and waged a gun battle with the police right out there in the street to get him, to free him right then and there before they can take him to jail. Right there on the street came and just lit him up, the police, and got their boy out of the police car, uncuffed. The police let him go. Stop firing at us, and uncuffed him and let him go, man. It gets crazy.
Feds came hard. Drugs, guns, conspiracy. But Nelson vanished before they could touch him. For 7 years, he stayed ghost, ducking the FBI, ATF, and Puerto Rican cops while running things from the shadows. His crew adapted, spreading power but still answering to him. A myth more than a man. They called him El Burro, the father, the mule. Tip lines climbed to $50K, but no one snitched. Fear and loyalty kept mouths shut, and while his empire ran on crime, he played the hero too, buying groceries, paying for funerals, throwing block parties. But his help had rules. Take the money, stay quiet, look the other way. Parents kept kids inside after dark. Shop owners paid or faced fire. And
that's what they all do. This is how some of these individuals get a lot of loyalty from the civilians, though. They take, Pablo Escobar was known for this, for doing a lot for his people, for his community. And they would not give him up. Basically, when the police come looking for these individuals, the civilians are there supporting them, hiding them out, and sometimes will come out and fight on their behalf with weapons, saying that you can't take him, like he's our hero. So I don't know if it's strategy sometimes, or it's probably not strategy. It's really that these people just care about their people in some sense, but obviously in other senses, not so much, because oftentimes the recipient of their violence are their own people, as it is with every group.
Cops stayed out of it. El Burro ran things his way, no questions. But by 2024, the pressure was too much. Feds, rivals, and even the streets were closing in. The FBI launched a task force to take him down in 6 months. They didn't need that long. One quiet October morning, they found him alone in La Haas. No fight, no drama. Nelson Torres Delgado finally gave up in silence. Word got around fast. Some folks cheered, others lit candles. For most, it felt like the end of an era, one built on fear, sure, but also a weird kind of order. El Burro might have ruled with a heavy hand, but at least people knew the rules. Now that he was gone, nobody knew what came next. Yeah, law enforcement called it a win, and technically it was. But peace? Nah, that didn't follow. His crew splintered overnight. New names popped up, all gunning for the throne. Los Viraos came out swinging, trying to carve out their chunk of the empire, and pretty soon the bullets were flying again. If anything, the streets got hotter. The feds weren't wasting time. They dropped indictments like mixtapes, raided stash spots, and started rounding up anyone who'd ever so much as shook El Burro's hand. But even with all that heat, Caguas stayed tense. People were used to the old ways, used to knowing who was in charge. With that gone, everything felt off balance. Some prayed for things to calm down. Others braced for worse. Law enforcement kept it real. They said this wasn't over. El Burro might have been the face, but the network he built ran deep. Ties to international smugglers, crooked officials, layers of middlemen. Taking it all apart? That was going to take years, maybe decades. But still, for the first time in a long time, there was something in the air. Hope. Faint, but real. Now, before El Burro ever hit the scene, Puerto Rico had already been deep in the gang life. Go back to the 70s and you'll find the OGs of the island's gang history, groups like the Netas and Grupo 27. The Netas, spelled with the tilde, were basically formed to stand up to the G27, who were straight up mostly coming out of the Manuel A. Perez housing projects in San Juan. G27 had a rep for being reckless and savage, hitting anybody, from rival crews to innocent people just trying to make it out of Monaquilo and Rio Piedras. The Netas started inside the prison system trying to push back against that violence. Both groups came up around the same time in Oso Blanco prison. Netas used to call G27 members insectos because they said they had no code, no respect even for women, kids, or elders. The Netas tried to build this Robin Hood image, all claiming they were fighting for the people, but let's not sugarcoat it, they had blood on their hands too. And behind bars, they moved weight, real weight. It's said the Netas control close to 75% of the drug trade inside Puerto Rican prisons.
Damn.
These days, the Netas are considered
That's a lot, and that's how a lot of these gangs end up starting to defend themselves. That's how Tango Blast started there in prison, because they were being extorted, harassed, bullied, pressured as individuals, and they decided to consolidate, congregate, and form the gang Tango Blast, and now they are known for being extremely vicious. Apparently the Netas are in the same boat. Many gangs have started like this to protect themselves, protect their community, protect their neighborhood, and then the gang that started in defense of themselves and their property and their community ends up being more vicious and violent than the gang that was the incentive for that gang to start.
The biggest gang in Puerto Rico, and they've even planted deep roots in the US. But back in the late 70s, things really exploded. Prison riots broke out all over the island, and it got ugly. Over 50 inmates lost their lives. According to Warden Luis Rosa, it all kicked off at the Bayamon Regional Jail, then spread to La Princesa. In one 1976 riot alone, 20 inmates were injured. Warden Rosa said that by then the prison system had about 14,000 inmates, and around 60% were Netas. In 1978, a corrections officer named Commander Hayon said the Netas were still finding their identity. That same year, a key figure emerged, Carlos Torres Irizarry, better known as La Sombra. He founded what became known as La Asociación, a pro-inmate rights group, and quickly rose to be seen as the Netas' leader. Meanwhile, G27 wasn't just watching. They started their own group focused on quality of life for inmates, basically a rival movement. The beef got serious, and then it got bloody. On March 30th, 1981, G27 pulled the trigger, literally, acting on orders from their leader, Mickey Manota Santido. A G27 soldier named Ito El Loco stabbed La Sombra 3 times. Then another inmate, known only as Gandhi, finished the job with a .22 caliber shot. La Sombra bled out, and according to legend, his final word was Puna, a slur used in the streets, cold and bitter, just like his end. After La Sombra was killed, the Netas hit back hard. Manota, the G27 boss, was stabbed over 150 times.
Damn.
Since then, prison officials have kept the two gangs in separate units to avoid bloodbaths. With La Sombra gone, the Netas quickly restructured. Benjamin Guzman Riva became president. Bonacio Lopez Rivera
stabbed him over 150. So the one that put out put out the hit, they said he was acting on orders when he stabbed the individual 3 times. They said, oh, okay. And then he ended up dying from his injuries. They said, oh, okay. You put out the hit to have our people killed, and they came at him, caught up to him and stabbed him 150 times. That's torture. That is a brutal way to go. Can you imagine? All of those stab wounds, people just hitting you, stabbing you, blood everywhere, all in your face, your eyes, your mouth, your neck, and they still hitting you, pain everywhere, wounds opened up, blood leaking, and they still hitting you 100 times, 50, and you just, oh my God, jeez.
Took VP, and Davisito Irizarry ran things as general secretary. Other key players like Luis Rosado and Carlos Casares helped expand the group's influence outside prison. Netas don't just flex behind bars. They show up at rallies, rub shoulders with politicians, and use their right to vote to build serious political sway. Even outside, many stay loyal, sending money and doing favors for leaders inside, just in case they get locked up again. On the streets, they don't claim the Neta name, they rep their Bodo instead, but the tension with G27 never dies. Netas call them insectos, and G27 fires back with gusanos. G27 may be smaller, but they're disciplined, dangerous, and still very much in the game.
And they fire back with pasanos. Okay, there you have it. Yeah, and they're still beefing, G27 and the Netas. After all this time, since the freaking 70s? Jeez. And well, yeah, that's why they formed a gang to go against these individuals that were picking on them, apparently, in the 70s, in those projects. And they said, okay, formed the gang and been beefing with those dudes ever since. And there has been immense bloodshed between the two. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm staying out of Mexico. I'm going to go ahead and stay out of there. I'm going to stay out of Puerto Rico. I'm staying out of there. No disrespect to them. They're good people. But they're violent parts. And I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I would have to go and check in and make sure I'm Where can I go? Where is it safe? Probably nowhere, man. Not for me. Nah. So yeah, I mean, and I don't think many. I mean, you have people going out there like getting surgeries and all of this as of late. Women in particular, some men too, though, going out there getting these BBLs and all this dental work done because it's a lot cheaper there in Mexico. But you go into certain parts of it, on the border of it or whatever. You're not going into the deep parts where you may not resurface from. But again, they say in Philly and in Chicago, there are no Bloods and Crips there. Anyone else from any city, state, where there are no Bloods and Crips in your city and state, let me know in the comments. Because it seems like it is just spread everywhere. It's dying down now. Gang banging is just super silly at this point. But it was spreading back in the days, and some of these places still have them, these gangs, and the gangs are still growing. But again, certain states and cities said, no, we have none over here, and we will not ever allow any to come over here and set up shop in our state. This is what they've said. In our city. Let me know. Stay safe and stay free, people.